Okay, so that took a bit of a time. My apologies. We are now live, as far as I'm aware. I'm going through two different channels. So we're live on Facebook and we're live on YouTube. I'm just going to double check the channels to see we're there. And that's the problem with having too many tabs up. So it's going to go live here. I'm going to wait for a few more people to join us. How are you all? Okay. Okay. So we are back on both of these sides. So hello and welcome. I'm going to say wait for a few more people to join. Okay. We are now live on Facebook. Eventually it's come on, and we're now live on YouTube as well. So a little bit about me. My name's Catherine. Catherine McMahon, and I run Catherine McMahon Consultancy. And I am a digital marketing consultant and a trainer, and I love training. I love seeing people's imagination spark. So I thought I'd do this today because I keep getting calls from people and wanting to go for a coffee, and everyone's sort of stuck in lockdown. I'm seeing a lot of questions come up on all the different information boards, and some of this stuff is quite. We're always a bit scared and a bit hesitant about what it is, but it always comes down to practical, practical sense, really, common knowledge. So okay. So I wanted to start with the most common question that I get asked, which is when people often comes up is which platform do you post on, for example. So if social media is one of those aspects that is one of those pieces that you are always jumping between different platforms, and you're always wondering whether you should put more effort, for example, into Twitter, or whether you should actually be jumping on the bandwagon of TikTok. Well, it doesn't quite work like that. Of course, we all say it depends upon where your customers and user base come from, but actually, it's also about what do you want them to do when they're there. So for example, your TikTok audience may not be your end buyers, but they may be your seed customers, the people that seed it out to other people, the people that share your content and then bring more people and more interest. And this all comes down to something that Google has termed the ZMOT, which is a zero moment of truth. I won't go into that unless people ask about it, but do Google it because it's worth a look. And it's really how digital marketing, it really is kind of the root of how digital marketing works. If you tie in all the other tools, sort of, so you can understand where the attribution of, you can have a look at the attribution of what people are looking for. Well, so basically what people are searching for, what kind of terms they're using. So that's your SEO. What kind of search terms they're using when they touch base with an advert, for example, a pay-per-click advert. It could be when they turn up to one of your events. How have they found you? How have people connected or shared that information through? So, for example, your audience might not be sitting within one platform, but that audience themselves might be your really powerful seed audience that will then support and increase your shared um, content that goes out there, which has a positive impact on your SEO, which then, of course, if you've embedded it or tied it in anywhere, then sits within your website, sits within your online profile all over the place. And knowing where and how these work is really difficult. There's so much that's happening and changing out there. I mean, it's a really exciting time for technology and social media and, well, digital marketing, really. We're seeing the influx of, so for example, as we know, TikTok's been around a little bit of a while now, but it really exploded last year. And now we've had Clubhouse, which has been around for, I think, almost a year, and it's huge. We're now seeing copycat versions of Clubhouse happening, and that's happening in something like Slack, for example. Now, we know that within Slack, you're not going to necessarily have an audio social network, but the features are going to benefit the users and your teams and communities within Slack itself. And so understanding all those features and how they change and how they work will have an impact upon your campaign, and the attribution of where your seed users will impact your content and push it up and push it out there. And then so it's so difficult because you want to then create that, well, the end goal really is making that sale. So it's not enough to have just 9 points and then you're sold, for example. It's more about, it's not just about 9 points you're sold. It's actually, there's so many different touch points. And of course, we really are going into the sort of practical use of something as well as the recreational use, but it's more, there's so much choice now that the cost of something and even the way we access that information has an added impact on the customer service and has an impact on our perception of the brand itself. And of course, the perception of the brand is then, of course, the brand reputation. So you see, all of it ties into each other, depending on, and so when you have, so not depending, and when you have a singular focus on what you want to achieve, mapping that out can really contribute to knowing where you're going and having a clear plan that's just going to get you there and make it simple. Because although digital marketing really isn't rocket science, it can get quite complicated. But not because we're trying to work out where this button goes and that button goes. It's because we're trying to understand where is the best place that we put our energy? Where's the best place that we can upskill our team, for example? So if you wanted to do additional training for your team to tell them to learn how to use Instagram or understand TikTok and why you would use TikTok, and then upskill your team and then kind of get them to implement this on a linear level. I mean, we're all over we're all working virtually from home, and it's making things quite complicated. So trying to not only convey what you're doing within a project and having that sort of project management element, you can't really just sit there and have that emotional connection with someone as well. So ensuring your plan works, you really do need to take a step back and have a look at each aspect in the process of what you're doing. You need to understand why that is beneficial to your business. And sometimes it's not as clear, it's not as obvious as going in and going, well, actually, we're getting loads of sales from this channel, but we're not getting any sales from this channel. Because this channel may actually be the one that's feeding all that information and feeding all the positive reputation, that's sealing all the customer service inquiries, that fulfills those desires, and then people find it easier to purchase in this channel. So understanding how those aspects work is crucial to getting yourself a clear plan and implementing that. Now, what was I thinking? There's along those lines. There's also um, i- as well as kind of having a clear plan. It's like, as I mentioned, it's about having the well, as well as having a clear plan, it's also about understanding what all these new features are and where it's going to take us. And right now, things are not slowing down. They are only going to get faster. And then we've got the additional complication of, well, eventually government bodies are now catching up and creating stronger, stricter policy around how we utilize digital. And my personal opinion is that is actually going to change quite a lot. So we're going to see restrictions. We're going to see things really narrowing down in certain areas. And then you've got to factor in. So this is, if is it were, this is your five forces that's going on. This is all the aspects around the world that are impacting what will happen to your brand or your industry. And of course, in the UK, we've just come out of Brexit, and that's had a big impact on the way that people work and the way that people will travel as well. Particularly, obviously, we've looked about the creative industries. Now, the creative industries is huge in the UK and contributes enormously to the UK economy. However, some people won't see it as that. But we're going to see a shift going over across Europe and going towards East. That's not for a while. But it's slowly happening. So we need to understand and utilize this digital technology. And it's not just about knowing which button goes where, and it's not just about knowing or running a live stream, for example, or it's not about writing a blog post and showing your expertise. It's kind of about all of them. And it's about the timing of when you do them and how you integrate them with other aspects, and how you need to be aware when something is of value to do at that moment in time and when you can bench something else. So, for example, I get a lot of people, obviously, every company's going, SEO, SEO, we all got to do it. It's so important. However, it is important. But if you're just starting up, if you're a small business, certain aspects of SEO you don't quite know, and you might cause more damage in your brand than you would in so more damage to your brand than you would be beneficial for your business. And also the other thing is when you're designing your website, a lot of people either go really, really big or they go really, really small, and they get stuck on the small stuff that doesn't move them forward. And that can be okay, thank you. And that can be really difficult as well. So sometimes you have to really see what your end goal is and work towards that and come back to certain elements and build on it. Okay, so thank you, Sonia. So how can you find the best time to post on Facebook and Instagram? Okay, so yes, right, best time to post on Facebook and Instagram. So there's multiple different ways of doing this. As you say, Google it. Great, Google it, and this gives you a benchmark. And then you start to find, then the more content you put in, it's good to make a note of what you're doing and when you're doing it. And then you start to see how much engagement you're getting and getting out there. And there are also apps. I don't know off the top of my head because there's so many apps out there. I have a whole library of them that I call upon. So there are apps as well that can tell you when the best time is. Of course, it always also comes down to when your target audience is on there as well. So Sonia, I know that your target audience is predominantly parents who are pretty much tired, working or not working, or working with their children, playing with children, and exhausted. So it's almost like those moments of tea breaks, finding the rhythm. And also another aspect is don't be afraid to create that rhythm as well. So the one thing about social media is the biggest value here is consistency. So people keep coming back again and again. And do you remember when we used to have the newspapers that used to be delivered to our door? So something like the Sunday newspaper would always turn up, and that you knew what time you were going to get it and sit down. And that's the same with your content and posting. So sometimes you might find that a text post is better for for example, in your case, Sonia, when parents might be able to glimpse it quickly and do a quick short reply. And another time, and another time is might be useful when you can create your sorry, you threw me with the comment. Another one might be when, yeah, so for example, doing videos. I know, Son, you've been doing some great videos on Instagram. And I think they're around about 5 o'clock. And that, again, that's really around about for young children. We're looking at their sort of slow down pace time. Mummy, daddy are making dinner. Things are sort of slowing down at the end of the day. So that's a great time to get the eyes, maybe not necessarily an engaged response. So again, thinking about that attribution, where are they coming from? And giving people plenty of warning that something's coming up. So you can factor that into your plan. So texting that, giving them a reminder in the morning, particularly parents, we always forget, don't we? We always forget that something's coming up. One thing that I never see utilized as much is sending calendar invites as well. If you've got something important going on, to ask people to contribute their calendars, ask people to sort of sign up and register. So at least then they've got reminders. But yes, thank you, Sonny. So don't be afraid to create the rhythm. Yeah. So again, it's about the consistency. If people, there are hundreds, I think it's about 8 billion people in the world. And at the moment we have the equivalent of a 65 to almost 70, I've got to double check that, 70 penetration of people that have access to the internet all over the world globally. That's huge. That's a huge number. And that has jumped by about 20% in the last 2 years, which again is phenomenal. And that's been easier because of the use of handsets, basically, the use that we're all using smartphones. And because we're all using smartphones, it means you can tap into people at different times. But again, there's a community for everyone. From one person who's going to like what you do, they may go to someone else who has a different approach, and even just a different persona, the way that they approach the same work. So don't ever be afraid that you won't be able to build that audience and create your own structure and rhythm that people will work to. They will go out of their way to make time to catch up with your posts and see and catch up with your videos as well. Now, I'm wondering if there's any other questions people might have. I hope, Sonia, helped answer your question. There's no one size fits all. But some of the best times, particularly in Instagram, are the moments when we think that we're kind of getting ready. So late at night, between 7 and 9 seems to be the most focal, and between about 7, 8, 9 in the morning as well. And that's UK time. So you might want to, another valuable thing is making a note of all the stuff that you've posted or anything that's been really particularly good, and trying it at different times in the day. And then you can start to reach out and get a global audience as well. And don't be afraid to follow people who you think who are similar to you. And it can always be daunting because we don't know, always be very daunting because we don't know what people are. We always feel intimidated by the fact of what they're doing. It's the FOMO, or what's the term when imposter syndrome, for example. So you see someone else doing something similar to you and you think, oh God, I can't do that. Or they're better than me, or they're doing it, but they're just doing it differently. So don't be afraid to follow them and see the times when they post, how often, and what kind of engagement they're getting back, and the kind of stuff. And then you can try that out with your own thing. So don't copy their style, as in design style, but you can definitely try out similar timings as well. And then again, it really is trial and error and consistency. So the best thing, again, I keep going back to it, is to make a plan. And by a plan, it really can be, well, sometimes for me, because I see everything as connected and joined up, and it's just, to me, it's very obvious. But getting that down into a linear process is the tricky part. So sometimes I'll work on an A1 piece of sheet and literally brainstorm and build it up from there, and then explain it through to the team as well. So another question that comes up as well quite often is how to onboard your team in this, well, in this unprecedented time of we can't really just nip and go and grab a coffee. You're missing that emotional connection. Um, okay, I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that. Thank you. So a couple of ways that I find it really easy is that that have made my life a lot easier is narrowing, kind of really compartmentalizing my time. I used to have a lot of Zooms with the team and they really ate into the day. Now I'm quite a present parent, and it's really important that I am there for him as much as possible. So I will work those chunks in the evening and take it off. So sometimes I'll be working hours, of course, when my colleagues won't, and vice versa. And we're absolutely fine with that as long as we touch base at one point every day. Now, you set up processes that work for you and your team. I work with people, all of them have young families, all of them, and they're all at different ages. So they're all doing different things, and they've all got different level of support from their partners or family and things like their support bubbles. So we have to work differently. But three things I wanted to say to manage your time and manage your time with working with the team is there is one particular app that I absolutely love and can't work without is Loom. Loom. It's absolutely fabulous. You can video record yourself and do a quick video like we're doing here, and then talk about the screen, and it's literally doing a handover of what the issue is. You can and then embed that video within emails. You can embed that within Trello, for example, or any of the other project management tools that you might be using as well. Another aspect is yes, compartmentalizing your time and being very strict of when you do and don't work. And that even goes as far as to saying, well, actually, look, if you've got your time and so for example, if you're stuck on something, you don't necessarily need to keep pushing past it. You can go off, take a break, but that is still your time, and making that space out. Obviously, that's a lot more difficult if you've got children in the house. If you're able to get out of the house, go and take a breather, take a break. Another thing is, and Evernote. I absolutely adore working with Evernote, the app, where we can brainstorm, mind map, and share content. And it works very much in a fantastic sort of digital marketing way, where we're benching things, we're pulling things back in, and always managing the team that way. And everyone has a say so. Okay. So another question: feeling stuck on whether to go set up free events, then let's sell my events within, or just be upfront with it in a post. Okay. That's a really so Sonia, thank you. That's a really interesting question. It depends upon, again, where you're selling your. So you might want to run a couple of taster events, definitely. And to set those up as free. But the big thing is to be just initially, but the big thing is to be very upfront about what's going to happen next. People are less surprised. They are much more open to it. It's not like jumping off a cliff. All of a sudden, bang, the next one's paid. It's about setting up the premise at the beginning, saying, I'm doing this as to test it and to make sure that everything's ironed out for the first two sessions, for example, and the next session, you'll have to be paid through this portal, for example. And yes, some events within. Okay, again, I'm thinking, so your events within what? Is it within a Facebook group? Is it within Kajabi, for example? Or is it within your community? But at the same time, always be upfront. Okay. I hope I've helped you there a little bit, Sonia. I'm going to leave it on that one. Now, I think I was talking as well about working closely with your team. Google Docs. I know a lot of people go to Google Docs. It does help an awful lot, but sometimes you can have a little bit of overlap. And well, here's a big one I always come up against is great, really pleased. Thank you, Sonia. So here's another one is storage. Is where and how things are stored is easier of how the team themselves manage it. So most companies will have all their storage based up in the all their storage based up in the cloud, for example. So whether you work with Dropbox, Box, I can't think. There's loads of them out there, and of course, Google Drive is one of them as well. Within that, it depends. Microsoft Dynamic, there's tons of them, depending on where and how you want to use it. So managing your team and giving people certain access, I would always advise people have access, but when you have static information, and this is key, store that information and let the team of that product or service view that information, but don't let them access it. Have one person who has ownership of that. And if anyone then wants to access it and update those details, for example, if you have email addresses, if you have particular hashtags for a campaign, anything like that, it's really important to make sure that you have everything stored together and it's synced, and so people have access to it, so you don't have duplications. Now, a couple of times, actually, there's about 2 or 3 campaigns I've worked on and come in at a later stage, and they have gone, yep, here's the documents, yep, here's all the information, and we're just straight into it. And particularly things in email have got lost, they've gone backwards, someone may have rewritten it wrong, and we've actually lost a whole load of budget, and we lost a huge amount of audience as well towards the end of the campaign. It's very disheartening, very, very disheartening. It's such a shame when something like happens. I mean, not to mention you're already fighting with sort of press and getting information out there sooner and quicker as well. So keep everything in a static information folder that people are not able to access themselves. Okay, so I work with business owners and CEOs to help them create clear strategic plans and kind of really cut out what isn't working and build in what is and how we can build in more. And I create clear step-by-step directions of how they can achieve what they want to, step by step, making their plans basically much more profitable and cutting out costly, disadvantaged applications, for example, and even information. I work with their teams as well. So I also run Thinking, which is a training platform, basically, that is lots of bite-sized training. So we're all very zoomed out, but these are bite-sized, engaging bite-sized training that are done in a short amount of time. And an awful lot of information, stats, trends, everything is all in there in each section. And people can mix and match depending on what kind of campaign they're building. What else? I think that's so. So I work closely with companies. I have the training side as well, and we also then do the implementation. And this is how we keep on top of all the features. This is how we keep on top of all the stats and trends and everything that's happening out there, making sure that we can then deliver the best for our clients. Okay. So if there's any other questions, just to recap, we've talked about creating having a strategic direction of what you're doing, which really helps to onboard clients. So it really helps to onboard and bring in employees and doesn't overwhelm them and overload them with yet more work. And if they have to train, then to go and do training that fits in and around their schedule, not to mention, of course, their home life as well, around their families. So we've talked about creating plans and understanding different features. This is something we're going to be doing more and more, particularly like this as well for Catherine Mann Consultancy and thinking. We're going to be doing a couple of taster sessions for people as well. And for thinking, this is the training. And I'm thinking, is there anything else? I think I've covered an awful lot. Yeah. So if you have any other questions, please do fire them at me. I'm on all the channels. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We used to be on Twitter, which was great. Not so much anymore because Twitter itself has evolved. We are not currently on TikTok because I'm not a teenager. But no, there's some really great stuff happening on TikTok, particularly some fantastic music that's coming out of it, as well as the usual comedy and fashion as well. So I look forward to, please do follow me. I'm at Catherine McMahon on Instagram. You'll have all the links are connected to this site and all of our social channels. So please do follow me and ask me if you've got any other questions as well. Okay. Thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you again soon. Cheers. Bye bye.